Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gretchen and today I am finally here with my first review from this year's Booker Prize Longlist. Normally, as soon as the Booker Longlist is announced, I tend to start the reading and get as much done as quickly as possible and start to get those reviews out. And that was the plan for this year as well. And I was successfully able to do that. I got some reading done, I got some videos filmed, but long story short, I ended up losing the camera card that had all of my filming on it, and I lost everything. So the reason I kind of did a lot of filming in advance was I knew I had some busy work weeks ahead with travel, and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to get filming done, but I could get some editing done in the hotels in the evenings. So I was trying to be proactive and get stuff done up front so I could get my content out consistently, but losing that, I did lose the ability to do that. But now I'm back home for a little bit and I have some time to get some filming done. So I'm going to try to make up for lost time and start to get those videos out there. So unfortunately, I feel like I'm way behind. I'm not behind in my reading. I've still been continuing to read. I'm just behind in getting my videos out. So hopefully you'll start to see more and more of those come out over the next few weeks and I can get caught up. Now, this particular book that I'm going to talk about today is Audition by Kitamura-A, and this was a book that I kind of already talked about on my channel. This was a review that I did as part of a wrap-up that I did, but I do obviously want to do a standalone review for it too, for those that maybe didn't see that wrap-up that I did. This was also a book that I successfully predicted. I didn't do a traditional predictions list this year. I did part prediction and part randomization, but one of the ones that I actually did predict was this book because to me, it felt very much like a Booker book. So when it did make the long list, I was not surprised to see it, and I was happy to have at least one book finished. Now, I mentioned I briefly talked about this book before, and I'm gonna try to maybe go a little deeper with it than I did previously, but I also want to be very clear that I'm gonna try to tread lightly. If you did watch that video, it's no surprise that I did enjoy my time with this book, but part of why I enjoyed it and what I thought made this book great was the transition from part one into part two. And I don't want to give too much away about what happens or what those differences are. So I'm going to be intentionally vague about some things as I go through this review, and I'll try to give as much that I can in the review without fully spoiling it for anybody, because like I said, I do think that some of the magic of this book lies in that transition from part one to part two. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about this book. So if you don't already know, this book, as I mentioned, is set up in two parts. And the first part of this book takes place in a restaurant in Manhattan for the most part. And we have an older 50-something actress, and she is going to this restaurant to meet a much younger man. He is in his 20s, he's very handsome, and she's going to this restaurant to meet him, and we don't really know why. We don't understand their connection with each other. We don't know what their relationship is, and not only do we not know that, but the patrons and the other people within the restaurant, including the workers, they don't know it either. So from the outside, not knowing what their relationship is, there's a lot of speculation. You're wondering, are they friends? Are they co-workers? Are they lovers? Are they related somehow? And there is just all this questioning as we're trying to figure out what that is. And eventually, as they sit down and their conversation starts to unfold, we do find out the purpose of them meeting and we learn more about what their connection is. But we learn about their connection to a point. There's still a lot of mystery that shrouds it. There's still a lot of questions to be answered. And even though the author is telling us what is happening and as far as their conversation goes, we're still not given a definitive answer as to what their relationship truly is and if it's even factual, if what is being presented to us is actually even a reality. So once we get through that part, we then end part 1 and we transition into part 2. Now, part 2 is very different from part 1. As a matter of fact, once I was into part 2, I seriously had to take a second to stop a couple pages in to think about whether or not I needed to go back and reread or go back further into part 1 because I felt like I had missed something very major. But instead of going back and restarting the book, I did decide to proceed and go further into part 2. And as I got further in, I just started to realize that no, I wasn't losing my mind. And it was just Kitamura starting to work her magic in the novel. And the whole time I was reading this, my mind was just reeling. And I started to think of all of the potential explanations or the logical explanations for what was happening in the narrative. And because of that, I just found this to be such a highly entertaining read for me. I was questioning everything. Was everything a dream? Was one of the parts reality and another part of a production that this actress was putting on? Or maybe even both parts were fake and both of them were theater productions or scripts or films. I think I mentioned in my first review that this book could be explained with many different theories, and there are valid arguments to support all of them. This is a book that could wear many hats, and every reader is going to walk away from it believing it to be a multitude of things, and none of us will know what Kitamura was actually planning, because I think that she so expertly planted all of these little seeds that could lead you to one explanation, and you'd have the logic to support it, but then somebody else could come in with the same pieces of information and come up with a completely different theory, but using that same evidence, they could also prove their theory correct. And it was just such, like I said, an entertaining reading experience to be able to read something like this that just totally blew my mind, and it felt so new and fresh and like something that I had never read before. Normally, for me to enjoy a book, it has to have a good plot or good character development, and honestly, I don't necessarily think that this book has either of those, but what it did have is the ability to make me think and read between the lines and allow me to piece together a story with all of the little bits and pieces of information that the author provided. I finished this book a few months ago, and it's still a book that I often think about. I don't often get the urge to reread a whole lot of books, but this is one that I would really like to revisit in the future. And it's also a book that I want to do a deeper dive on my own with. I have watched a couple videos of other people reviewing this novel, and I've read a couple online reviews as well, and each of them is so different. Some of them are similar in alignment to what my thoughts are, but others, like I said, are so different but so valid. And the more I think about what it is they're saying, I'm trying to talk myself out of my theory, but then there's somebody else that's thinking the same thing that I am, and it is just so fun. The experience for this book for me just doesn't lie within its own pages. It has also forced me to look outside of the book and seek my own answers and get the opinions of other people. And it's a book that you could talk about for a very long time, and I don't think that I would get bored with the subject. I will also say though that I don't think that this is going to be a book for everyone, especially if you're a reader that really is expecting something straightforward and you don't want to use a lot of brain power to figure out what's going on and you just want to be told a story. This definitely isn't that type of book, but if you're willing to just go along for the ride and be satisfied with not having all of the answers at the end, I definitely think that this could be an enjoyable read for you. I also haven't read anything else from this author, but this book has really intrigued me and I would like to visit some of her backlist. I am curious to know if any of you have any specific suggestions on maybe the next book I should pick up from her. I don't necessarily think that I am expecting another Audition type book from her, but I would hope that some of her other books have a little level of experimentation to them and they're doing something nuanced and they're doing something different. I don't think that Kitamura, from my impression of Audition, is going to be a writer that is just going to give us anything straightforward ever. So I'm curious and I'm hopeful that her other books are doing something kind of in the same vein that Audition did. And if you have any specific recommendations on where I should go next, I would love to hear them. So now that the first review is done, I'm happy to say that this one was a success, and I hope that the other 12 reads will live up to this one and be just as entertaining, but time will certainly tell. I'm curious to know how your Booker journey is going so far, if you're participating. I would love to know if you have any standout reads from the long list. Have there been any disappointments or anything else Booker that you want to talk about? I would love to hear about it in my comments. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, or subscribe, and until we read again, bye!